Hey, Patrick, how you doing, bud?
Not too bad at all, buddy. So what have you for me today?
Well, you know where we were watching Brandy Cruz with the drug situation with the new city attorney uh, in Seattle, Washington?
Yeah.
Well, it looks like British Columbia did this and realized it didn't work. So Washington has a model, but we're going to go over what British Columbia decided to do and why.
Okay.
So,
So they were trying to do what Amsterdam does.
except it's not Europe, right? So it's not
Yeah.
going to have the same
Different
effect.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's different
Culture,
culture,
yeah.
as they say.
So, but what they're looking at was the model from Portugal, and they went away from that model, but they had enough assets in place for substance abuse programs to make it effective. And they had a
Okay.
horrific problem that they recovered from. We'll go into that in another episode, what Portugal did and why it worked, and why it
Right.
functionally isn't going to work on the North American continent at this time. So,
No.
this is AP World News. This is British Columbia ending its 3-year drug decriminalization pilot project. We'll get
Okay.
into who the players in the game are and why it is they made the decision that they made. I will start reading and we will get to it. So,
Okay.
all right. So, this is British Columbia's health minister, Josie Osborne, and she's speaking at the end of the province's 3 years experiment. So,
Yeah.
this was updated January 14th. So, Victoria, British Columbia, Canada's Pacific Coast province of British Columbia, is ending its 3-year experiment in decriminalizing possession of small amounts of drugs. British
Okay.
Columbia Health Minister Josie Osborne announced Wednesday the province is not seeking an extension of its agreement with Canada's federal health agency that allowed the decriminalization of small amounts of drugs for personal possession. So we run into, again, a
Ooh.
problem with how much is a small amount? When are you considered a dealer versus a user? Understanding it's still illegal to sell the drugs, but not illegal to be in possession of a small amount of the drugs.
Hmm. Okay.
So
Right. Right.
that's a bit of consternation there, because if I just throw away a bunch of drugs and I only have the amount that I'm allowed to have, then it's going to be difficult to
Yeah, that's going to cause all sort of legal issues there.
right. And then attempting to prosecute the crimes again, law enforcement isn't going to mess with it because there isn't going to be any real consequences for the action, right?
Yeah.
All right. So Osborne said the goal of the 3-year pilot project, slated to end January 31st, was to make it easier for people to come forward to seek help, but it hasn't delivered the results officials hope for. Well, you're fighting addiction, right? And you said before
Yeah.
that is a disease that is not easy to deal with.
No, it's not. And it depends on the drugs that are being used, like heroin and so on upwards. The heavier the drug, the harder it is to a person to break that habit. And
Right.
that's the sad fact about it.
Well,
That
and
is awful.
consequently, cigarettes, although they're not at that level, nicotine is a very serious problem as well, but it doesn't kill you
Mm.
quite so quickly.
But yeah, nicotine is actually probably the most addictive substance known to man, even though it's
It's
100% legal.
yeah, pretty much. So,
Yeah.
Oregon's first in the United States experiment with drug decriminalization ended in 2004 when possessing small amounts of hard drugs will once again become a crime. Oregon voted in 2020 to decriminalize, and Washington
Okay.
just voted recently also to they set it up so there's a lead team, and the lead team decides if they're going to take a trial or what are they going to do with it, right? So they've put in another
Right.
obstacle on their side, right? So British Columbia's decriminalization project began January 2023 after Health Canada granted the province an exemption under the Federal Controlled Drug and Substances Act. So they had to go through Canada's federal government
Yeah.
to allow it to happen in the first place, right?
Mm.
So
That's why Canada is set up, where people are wondering how California can legalize and the rest of this. You know what I mean?
right,
There's
right,
a different structure in Canada compared to
yes.
the United States.
Mm-hmm. So it initially allowed adults to possess up to 2.5 grams cumulatively of opioids, crack, and powdered cocaine, methamphetamine, and MDMA. So
Oh,
any amount up to 2.5 grams was acceptable to have, right? I don't know what
okay.
their deal was with possession versus public use and all that kind of stuff. I didn't go into that, but we have another article that might go into that
Yeah.
that will clear that up for us. If it doesn't, we'll get the information. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, but
So
yeah, no, it's actually right here in the next paragraph.
oh, here we go. In case it
Yes.
wasn't there, though, I want to let them know we're going to do the
Yeah.
investigative work that we do. Right, two complex voices, one complex world. So, but in 2024, the exemption was amended to restrict such possession to private homes and places where homeless people are legally sheltering, as well as designated healthcare clinics and overdose prevention, drug checking, and supervised consumption sites. So the issue or problem with this is homeless encampments and those kinds of places are functionally open air drug markets, right? That's what they deteriorate into. It isn't just a place for the homeless people to get blue tarps and other little vehicles and things and get under them. It is a place where the drugs flow freely, which means there is an exceptional amount of other kinds of crime, right?
Yes. They were saying between 5 to 10 miles within one of these camps,
Mm-hmm.
crime is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's
And
an
that's the
area.
sad thing about it. Yeah.
It's like kids play the games and they talk about area of effect damage. It causes cultural decay in quite the circumference around the place where those things are, as the people tend to go to those places to get those drugs, right? Because,
yes, big time.
A lot of times the cops and things just won't go in there. Like, they've decided to destroy their lives. There's no real consequences for their actions on society at large, except that there is, because of the destruction of the culture in the area, right?
And plus the other knock-on effects of crime as well, like thievery and the whole lot, just to feed the habit.
Right.
It has massive knock-on effect all over.
They're going to go on a mission to get their dope. That's what they do. They're addicted to the dope. So,
yeah.
All right. So, with the end of decriminalization, Osborne said the government is focused on strengthening the approaches that are helping people get timely, appropriate care. This seems like a vague political statement, right? It doesn't actually show a solution. It just says we're going to work on it real good. We're a nose to the grindstone. We're going to make special things happen for all of our constituents and citizens.
And the sad thing is, the reason I can point out the reason why it would not work as in the likes of the United States compared to Europe is, one, most of the healthcare in Europe is sponsored in some way by the state. Like, I know Portugal, for instance, they would have the same medical card system as we would, where you have free access to healthcare and addiction services and so on. Where the privatized sector in the United States and the way it's just set up, insurance and everything else, it wouldn't be as easy to access, I don't think.
Well, there's another couple of things you got to take into account. One is stigma, right? If you say that you are addicted to drugs, then you're showing a kind of weakness, right? And the other one is, do I have access to the care like you were talking about? And then how difficult is the process going to be? And then dealing with addiction is just a horrifically difficult thing anyway, right?
Oh, it's unbelievable. And that's why I said the European models very rarely work in countries like the United States.
Right.
Because everything is privatized in a certain amount. And it's not going to work if it's great having these policies in place, but you don't have the infrastructure for it. Is the only way I can put it.
Right. So it says, and look what this, if you compare this to what they were saying in Seattle, this sounds like it's the same playbook. We're building a more complete and comprehensive system of mental health and addiction care in British Columbia, including prevention, treatment and recovery, harm reduction, and aftercare. So obviously she said that in her statement. But again, it sounds like what the city attorney is trying to do, but the city attorney is putting a administrative block or counter or obstacle in the process, which is going to make it so law enforcement isn't going to want to even attempt, because again, no consequences for the actions. If the DA is just going to throw it out, like it does me no good, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not, as I said, European models work in Europe because, rightly or wrongly, we're different mindsets,
different cultures, different people, for sure.
Yeah, and plus, if a person has an addiction, say, and I'm just taking Ireland for example, if a person goes to the likes of AA or NA or so on, and they say, look, I struggle with drugs, I struggle with alcohol or so on, there's not as much as a stigma there.
Right. For sure.
As you were saying, in the United States, it would be pride and stigma and everything else. It's different. Our cultures are completely different when it comes to a lot of these issues.
In 2001, Portugal became the first country in the world to decriminalize the consumption of all drugs. Kind of like an Amsterdam thing, but a little bit different.
Yeah.
So
a little bit different. Portugal is an interesting country. They just deal with the problem straight away. How we're going to solve it. Different type of people as well.
Right. All right. Now we're going to switch over to the CP24. Again,
Yeah,
British
Dash.
Columbia to end decriminalization project after challenging 3-year experiment. So
Mm.
again, this is Josie Osborne. So, and we'll get back into this one. British Columbia won't be renewing its agreement with Health Canada that allowed for the decriminalization of small amounts of drugs for personal possession, officially ending a 3-year program that was hailed as a groundbreaking experiment before critics blamed it for fueling public disorder and failing to rein in the overdose crisis. Again,
Yeah.
Seattle did this before, and they had this problem, and now they can look just to the north of them and see the fix didn't work, whatever that fix was,
Yeah.
right?
But you have to remember, Canadians and Americans have very similar mindsets when it comes to dealing with drugs or addiction
Right.
or anything around that.
This is just a representation of suicidal empathy, right? There are no
Yeah.
consequences because we're just patting people on the back and saying, it's going to be okay, dope fiend. It's going to be great. And then nothing happens because they're just allowed to continue to do that.
Yeah,
right?
because a lot of people like addiction's a very complex issue to deal with individually. So you have to have a lot of infrastructure in place before you'll even attempt anything like this. You have to have proper people in law enforcement, proper people in training. It's not as easy as flipping a switch.
Right. Well, do you think the mental health establishment is going to be able to handle that? It's pretty extensive. Those processes are pretty extensive.
Yes, I there's a lot of investment has to go up front before you even attempt anything like this.
Right. Well, it has to be provided to the public. It has to be provided to incarcerated persons. It has to be provided to senior citizens. It has to be provided like it has to be across the board because if people get missed.
Yeah, the infrastructure is just not there in Canada or in the United States. Where in Portugal, if you look at what they've done in 2000 onwards, they put a lot of infrastructure and time and effort into putting everything in place before they went down this road. So they had all the training done, they had all the law enforcement training and so on. Where unfortunately, Canada is it's a mixture of private public when it comes to their healthcare. In the United States, it's for the most part fully different. I wouldn't see it working in either of these two countries. Either of those two countries.
I don't think so either.
And the United States.
Yeah. So the health minister, Josie Osborne, said Wednesday that the goal of the pilot project, slated to end January 31, is to make it easier for people to come forward and seek help during complex health emergencies. We covered a little bit of that before. From the beginning, the pilot was designed as a time-limited trial with ongoing monitoring built in so we could understand what was working and what wasn't and where changes were needed. So apparently this playbook that has been played before, it turns out to not work every time, at least in Canada and the provinces there, as well as the states in the United States, right?
Yeah, it's because you have to remember, it's a different. They're trying to borrow models from other countries without understanding that these countries are different.
Right. Well, you know what that reminds me of? So the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation put in place a thing they call the Norway Project, right? So it is based on Norway's homogenous population and how it works over there, except that it doesn't work with racially bifurcated spaces where the inmates split up into race groups and things like that, right? It's just not going to work, right? Because there's not an acceptance of someone because there's no trust there, right? And those who are incarcerated in California don't trust the system. They've been incarcerated, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's just in a circle, not going to work, right? So when you try and take something that's culturally not a fit and like try and force the square peg into the round hole, it's not going to go, right?
But I think what the sad thing over there is a lot of the people in charge of both in Canada and the United States, they're looking around systems that work without building their own system unique to themselves, which they should do. They sit down with a pen and paper and draw up their own system instead of trying to borrow systems from other countries. Just, put a bit of thought into it.
Well, right. If they could compartmentalize it and take the things that work from other places and then map it onto what their cultural systems are, then I think that would be better. It'd be much better.
Way better system. Because unfortunately, what will work, say, like in Norway, for instance, will be way different from what would work in California, as you were saying.
Right. It's just
especially with
wildly different.
Especially with all the different races that don't particularly like each other in California is the best way to
Right.
put
Well,
it.
and then
Especially,
there's a trust issue, right? So the society in Norway, except for some of its immigration, is functionally homogenous. So the people who are
Mm,
incarcerated are thinking like the general public, so they can work with that, right? But when
yeah.
you have disparate groups and economic disparity and lots of other factors that go in, it's going to be a different story, right? Oh, and here's a
Oh yeah.
shocker. Here's what Josie Osborne said. I don't know if you're sitting down, but however, the pilot hasn't delivered the results that we hoped for. Like, really?
No,
Really?
I could
Strange.
I could have could have told her that 3 years ago. It wouldn't work. Not
Well,
just in Canada, or it wouldn't work because they probably didn't put in the infrastructure or training beforehand to
right.
make it
Well,
work.
Patrick, they didn't ask you. They should have. They should have gone to Ireland and said, "Hey, Patrick, what do you think here?" And they should have let
Look,
you into the big kid meeting and like taken your opinion.
like we wrestled with this idea ourselves in Ireland the last 2 decades on about decriminalizing this or doing this model or that model, and we realized that it might work in some cases, but for the vast majority, it won't. That's unique to Ireland. Like every country is struggling with this problem.
Right.
We realize that, yes, should we prosecute every person with a small bit of cannabis? Probably not.
No.
Now, should we prosecute them when they have class A's? Yes. So we've kind of come up with a model that works for us.
Right. 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 All right. So the program is ending amid the same sort of division it inspired since 2023, with critics blaming it for drug deaths and public disorder, and supporters saying it helped reduce stigmatization that could deter people from seeking life-saving help. Some supporters
Yeah.
of the program say the decision to end it was made in the cabinet office amid public pressure rather than with input from the health officials. Again, there's a lot of societal decay and area of effect damage to the local culture that happens when this occurs. So it's going to be a
Yeah.
political hot potato every time because the people who live there say it's not working. When your constituents keep telling you it's not working, the mental side or the medical side can say whatever they want to say. But when you see it is not working, it is not working. If it's readily
I
apparent, right?
me personally, the only way you really solve your drug problem is having proper infrastructure in place. Proper beds for so people can recover and get treatment and so on.
Right.
Realizing that it'll only work for 30 to 40% of those addicts.
Oh, for sure. And if that. And a lot of
That's
times what
just
they end up doing in the United States is they put them in beds and say, hey, you can, stay here as long as you don't do dope. But then the drive
yeah,
to do the dope drives them out of the protected
and
place.
so on.
Yeah. And then you've
I
failed the program. You are a program
and
failure and they're not going to take you back.
like then you have the other side where they should say, "Oh, just lock them up, lock them all up, and throw away the key." That's another option that doesn't work either. There's no perfect solution for this, by the way. Anywhere
Because
in the world,
people are
there's no
people, they're
perfect solution.
individuals and they're gonna run their
Exactly,
own they're gonna
exactly.
run their own game, whatever it
There's
is,
no
right?
model. There's no model going to fix all these social issues. I think the bigger problem why drug use is on the rise, especially among Western countries, even towards poorer countries as well, but we'll just stick to Western countries, is more and more people are under pressure and they just want to escape that pressure, which
Right.
leads to other problems and so on.
Yeah,
And
self-medication
I
for
think
sure.
I think it's a larger issue in society at the moment that drug use is on the rise. It's not
Right.
just down to people just
Well,
looking
and
for.
understand that while a lot of drugs come into the United States from Mexico directly, a lot of them get shipped up to Canada and come down across the largest unprotected border on the planet. Right? There's lots of ways to
Actually,
get through
yeah.
that
Well, the
border.
last time they had figures from Canada and the United States before this present administration, 30% come over Canada, but 70% come from the south of the border.
Right, but understand
Into
that in an industry worth billions of dollars, 30% is still
they're going to,
billions of
yeah, they're going
dollars.
to, yeah. I've seen the rhetoric over the last while, flipping the figures around, trying to park Canada a certain way. But the reality is 70% of cocaine in the world comes from south of the border.
Well, for sure, for sure. But again, a significant portion of 30% does come south. So
It
let's get
does,
back
yeah.
to
Of
it.
course, they're going to find a way to, as you say,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
worth billions. They're
Yeah.
going to find a way into your border, even if you shut down all your borders in the morning. going to find a way.
Right. Oh, somebody, yeah, they're going to get their bag. There's money involved for sure, right?
Yes, of course they are.
And if
It's worth
Americans didn't
billions.
want it, it wouldn't come, but they want it,
Exactly.
so it will come. So, all right, DJ
Actually, you know
Larkin.
who?
Go ahead.
Actually, a famous cartel leader said that one time
Yeah.
to the U.S. government. If your population didn't want it, we would be selling it.
Yeah, for sure, right? It's a product
Yeah.
and or service, just like anything
Yeah.
else, right? If I want to go buy a bottle of alcohol, I know where to go get it. If I want to go buy some bread, I know where to get it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So, DJ Larkin, the executive director of the Canadian Drug Policy Coalition at Simon Fraser University, said stigma built up over 100 years can't be reversed in 3. But there were early indicators people were more comfortable accessing supports. Again,
Yeah.
the amount of people who are living in the homeless encampments / open air drug markets and all the other beds and places where they're putting them, they still weren't stopping. And it wasn't a significant portion of them, a significant enough portion of them to reduce the cultural decay.
Of course, it's not going to work because if you're homeless and you're living in a tent, you're going to look for some form of escape,
Yep.
escape from your situation, either be drugs, alcohol, or so on.
You're gonna get something.
As
Right?
I've always said, it's a more complex issue than trying to legalize it or not legalize or do this or do that. You have to have the infrastructure in place for the person to get out of that situation. To go
100%.
from being a drug addict to a functional person in society is a long road. Long road.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't work all the time.
Right. Medically, it doesn't work. Society doesn't let it work. You as an individual don't let it work. There's a lot of factors involved for sure.
I think the problem is with the Americans, they have a very simplified way of dealing with these kind of issues.
Black and
Just
white.
lock them up and throw away the key. That's it. Which doesn't really work either because you're sending a drug addict into a prison so he can buy more drugs and comes out and does the same thing over and over again with no supports in place.
Right. Well,
and I think that's the problem with a lot of American policies. They're very simple solutions with big headlines.
One of the biggest overdose issues that we have in the United States is with incarcerated persons who, while they can get the drug of choice that they're looking for, they do a certain amount before they get in. It's reduced, and when they get out, they go back to attempting to use whatever kind of drug they were using at that amount they were using before. And without staff there with Narcan on hand to bring them back to life, they get out, they do a wild bunch of dope, big fat 8-ball, boom, 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 dead. So, all right, here we go. So Larkin said a decrease in interactions with police was important because involvement with the justice system can drive harm, including losing housing and employment, increasing risk of overdose. Oh, man.
That we have seen that statistic ourselves over here.
Right, but the decrease in interaction is because there's a lack of consequences. Right? Why is law enforcement going to get tangled up in a situation where they don't feel the end result is good for local culture and society? Right?
Yeah, and I think the sad part is there is no solution. Like, I understand law enforcement's frustration. It is very, very frustrating for them. But I think if they had better training dealing with addicts, they could probably have better results. It always comes down to lack of training.
And that's what's driving a lot of constituencies, a lot of places to say we should just send in social workers. The problem is sometimes with people who are using some kind of substance, they're violent people. So you're going to send in someone who can't effectively defend themselves. They might be a good talker, but when someone brings a frying pan at your head, like, that's a problem. And if you don't have the appropriate training to defend yourself,
in other countries, social workers along with law enforcement combined.
Right. Well, the combination would be a good deal.
Has had very good results.
It has.
I think the problem with American law enforcement, especially, is they have a question of force has to be met with force all the time. And that comes down to maybe a bit of better training would probably be called for.
Right. Well, recently with all that defund the police stuff and a lot of the money going out the window for that, it makes a lot of departments less able to deal with it. Right. Now we don't have the money to get the licensed clinical social worker to ride along with law enforcement when there's a domestic violence call or some drug related call. Right. They're just not there. So
They don't. Yeah, they just don't have the funding for it either. You're right. They just don't have the finances.
that would be a good use of funds, making sure that people can get back into society, be functional, happy, and contribute. And contributing to
Yeah.
society is one of the ways we feel like we are making a better contribution overall.
What I think they should do is maybe pour more money into law enforcement training, especially,
For sure. For
and
sure.
also give them the resources needed to do the job.
Right. Well, but now there's
All
also a
across.
stigma on law enforcement, right? Now there's a stigma on law enforcement. And a
Yeah.
lot of departments, we were talking about the Seattle police officer union. They were saying there's a bunch of folks that are going to retire, like their past
Yeah.
time they can retire. So not only are they losing cops left and right in, say, NYPD, LAPD, Seattle, all these places where they need more bodies on the streets, right? They just need them.
Yeah. But also, the young people are not willing to join police forces anymore or join any of the badges anymore.
Nope.
They just don't want it. They don't.
Right.
It's not just out. You could promise them the sun, moon, and stars and all the financial benefits. But the younger generation has an active and open hatred of police in a lot of ways. And in
Oh, for sure. For sure.
yeah, you can see it in the United States. Defund the police. You can see an awful lot of young people have turned against the local police department and federal forces.
Right.
You
And
see it a
nobody's
mile away.
taught them how to interact with law enforcement. They haven't said,
I
these are your rights. Here's what you should do. They don't want to hear it anyway. Hey,
But there's also a flip side where you see the way law enforcement deals with the public over there. We've all seen the videos where the
right.
local cop pulls over the young man, and they're just a complete and utter ass about things.
Right. And you don't argue with the cop. That's not who you argue with. You go to the
No,
judge
I'm
and
talking
say,
about the cop.
hey, right.
We've all seen the videos on the flip side where the cops are not exactly very friendly either.
But no,
And
and I
it always
understand that.
comes down.
I understand
It
that.
always comes down to when you look at afterwards. We're looking at this cop, this local police department. He gets a couple of weeks training in the college. Then he's sent out in the street for 6 months with a training officer. Here's a badge. Off you go.
Right. But
And
it's more
you'll
involved than
find
that
out that more.
to get post in the United States, right? You have to
Well,
go through an academy. That academy is going to be no less than 4 months, right? It's not
yeah,
just 2 weeks and he's on the street. But the field training
you know, I
officer can
didn't say
down
that.
check him.
I said I said a few weeks and a few months training. But you also, when you look at a lot of these police officers, because so few people are willing to join police departments, so what they get is candidates who wouldn't be how can I
Right.
put it nicely, not the sharpest tools in the shed.
Right. Not the best kinds of candidates for good law
Like,
enforcement, right?
yeah, we even see it with ICE at the moment. So some of the carry on there, how badly trained they are. Because they get a couple of weeks training and off you go. Here's a badge, and it always ends with bad results when you have poor training of officers across the board.
Right. And I
Because you're
understand
desperate
that.
to get bodies
But
in the
the
street.
ICE training is not that short. The ICE training is actually pretty comprehensive. We can actually go
It's,
into
it's
that in
no,
another episode.
it's actually only 2 weeks if you have law enforcement experience. And then you go out on the street with a training officer, 3 to 4 months, depending on what area, and then you're an ICE agent.
Right. But we'd have to go over what that training regimen actually looks like before we can make serious comments on it.
Yeah, but
That might be a European impression of what's going on because of media that's slanted one way or the other. But before I make a commitment to that, I would look it up. You know.
yeah, it's not good training, no matter what way you try to put a ribbon on, and we all kind of see the results.
Right. But again, we don't know exactly what that training is. We'd have to go into it. Neither one of us are ICE agents or a part of that program. So, but we can look into it. That way we'll be better informed. So, all right, this was a decision made to follow a particular political path that has been cited by the British Columbia government, not one that is informed by chief public health officer, coroner's offices, academics, researchers, or people who use drugs, not informed by the experts. So Larkin is saying we need more input, and the political side has just overrode that and said no. So we already went over the decriminalization, MDMA at 2.5 grams, plus the cocaine, crack, methamphetamine, opioids.
Yeah.
The program is pitched with a goal to reduce stigma and fear of criminal prosecution that prevents people from reaching out for help, including medical assistance, right? So if you roll in and you're doped up, they're afraid that they're going to get pulled in and then they're going to have to do time, right? So that's not good. And then they can't stay clean long enough to get into the program. And then if they're just using it as an escape, they don't particularly want to either, right?
No, they don't. No.
And here is the same kind of thing they're talking about in Seattle and other large metropolitan areas. But a furor ensued over claims that the program was encouraging public drug use in playgrounds and other inappropriate places. And in May 2024, the exemption was amended to restrict possession to private homes and places where homeless people are legally sheltering, right? So if they're legally sheltering, they're allowing them to do the dope in the legally sheltering place, which again is not the best. If I am as a taxpayer paying taxes, I don't want to pay taxes for someone to be able to go into a building and then do dope in the building. It just feels really, really bad. It's a
No,
bad
that because it doesn't look. It's not good for the neighborhood. It depends on how it's operated. Probably the best way to put it. If it's in a derelict warehouse area that's specializing in this, away from the general public, there's people and medical staff on site, it does work. But if it's in a built-up area with kids and so on, families around, it won't work.
Oh, for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
All right, so where are we? But a furor ensued over the claims. The exemption was amended, as well as designated healthcare clinics and overdose prevention, drug checking, and supervised consumption sites. So again, if you can medically monitor what's going on, you can have a better handle on it, and on top of that, get better statistics. Surrey, BC mother Ellen Lynn said the end of the program came too late. She linked it to the death of her 14-year-old daughter, Lou, who died of a fentanyl overdose on January 30th, 2025. Many innocent lives were lost during those 3 years, especially children. What explanation does Osborne have for the families who lost their loved ones? I think the policy is totally a failure. She said at Mandarin at a news conference in Richmond, British Columbia, that was coincidentally held on Wednesday, just ahead of the minister's announcement in Victoria.
Wow.
Lynn said allowing the possession of drugs made it easier for adults to provide them to children like her daughter, right? So if you don't restrict the flow, then people are going to be around places, again, the cultural decay, that 5 to 10 mile circumference around the area where the bad thing is happening, right? So as a mom who lost my youngest daughter, I think the policy is extremely ridiculous, said Lynn. When a child's life was in danger, I have been exploring all resources and methods to save her. I had been seeking help from the police, from counselors, and the school board, but I felt helpless. These absurd policies block the path to save my child's life. So we're going to run into some of the same issues, I think, with the city attorney in Seattle. If there's no consequences, people aren't going to get pulled in. If I can't pull them in, I can't effectively assess them. If there's something in front that says they're not going to prosecution, I pick them up, I arrest them, I book them into the jail, they get released, and they come back whenever the lead team says. And that just seems like it's not going to be.
The problem is with Seattle and other, as I said, it will not work because the culture is not there for it to work. There's no infrastructure in place by the sounds of it.
Right.
She hasn't worked with people on the ground properly.
Right.
The district attorney is trying to cobble together this kind of lead team to sort it out. There's no joined up thinking yet.
Yeah, it feels super disparate.
It's doomed from the start by the sound of it.
Osborne said the public conversation around decriminalization had become, in quotes, very challenging, and that the government wanted to focus on a, in quotes, health first approach. So it's the same rhetoric. It's the same thing. It's not, here are solid solutions based on the facts and evidence-based research we've done. It's just, this is tough. We're having a hard time. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the only way this will work was with serious money and investment.
Right.
Up front.
And that's what this is talking about.
Can't just write a law, put it in place, and hope that what you have cobbled together already will work. It won't. No way it's going to work. And not that just in Seattle because of that mayor. It won't work anywhere in the United States because a lot of police departments have shoestring budget to begin with. This is not going to help.
Right. Ms. Osborne again. With the decriminalization pilot ending, though, we continue our work. Continue this work of adding treatment and recovery beds, continue to expand the intervention and supports, continuing to extend harm reduction services, and undertaking everything that we can to save lives. So obviously, we want to save lives. We want to do what the best thing is, but sometimes ideologically, we just can't get there, right? Plus, with a cobbled together and a lack of infrastructure, it's going to be really, really difficult.
Yeah, especially it looks like Canada they tried to cobble them together, try to fit into the system they already had in place, which by the sounds of it was not that well funded.
Right.
begin
Larkin
with.
said returning to criminalization will mean inconsistent policing in terms of who is arrested and charged, and more people using drugs in secret who will be afraid to get help. A return to criminalization would embolden people to increase stigma and decrease compassion and push for more policing. Okay. If people are doing illegal things, they should expect to be arrested. That's how that works, right? So, as adult people with agency, we know there are consequences for our actions. If you know that, but you still do the thing and you get picked up, you should say, well, I did the bad thing, and we have a set of social mores that we have created laws around.
Yes, and there should be flexibility in laws as well. If you get picked up the first time, it should be a slap in the backside.
Hey, bud.
Yeah. Now,
bad boy. Try again.
if you get caught the second time, it should be consequences onwards.
Right, but with the suicidal empathy we have in a lot of these places, there are people getting up 30, 40, 50 times. We read an article the other day where someone had been picked up 71 times. 71 times. That is preposterous on its face, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go as far as to say that's absolute bullshit, right? We have violent people who are getting out 10, 15, 20 times after committing violent acts, battery, burglary, all these wild things, and they're just getting released, right?
I know people in my country who they might as well they spend most of their time in and out of prison since they were teenagers. And there are serious crimes they have committed over time, but there should be. I'm much prefer the zero tolerant policy, say, of likes of New York and so on. The 3 strike rule kind of does wonders as well. 3 strikes are out kind of situation now. I know people might say that's a bit harsh, but sometimes it works.
I have opinions on that, but we're going to table those for another episode because that will take us.
What, you think it's too harsh? You think it's too harsh?
I've seen the results in the state of California, and it functions on some levels, but on other levels it doesn't. And it is a truly complex issue that we can discuss offline before we find the appropriate articles to get into it, because I don't want to go into that one unprepared. I want to have all my little duckies in a row before I counter your argument, because there are good reasons to counter it. But there's some I put that there's some basis for your belief to be functional, but in practice it doesn't seem to work that way.
No,
for the most part.
Like when I say 3 strikes, I mean 3 strikes of serious crimes. Not 3 strikes and you're locked up for life for, say, robbing cigarettes or whatever, small things like that. I'm talking about serious crime.
Right, but there's felony riders on crimes that can make a single crime a triple felony. Right?
Okay.
So they're called stackers, and there's reasons for them. If anybody wants to look into it, Penal Code 667.
I know that. I've seen it.
So anyway, it's to force the triple threat, to force that 3 strike immediately on one. So, but that's So it's not just the crime; it's things attached to the crime. Was there a gang affiliation? Was a weapon used? There's a lot going on there. So, but we will get into that in a future episode. All right.
Okay.
So Simona Marsh, a member of the board of directors for the Vancouver area network of drug users, said the program was good for the psyche among people who use drugs. Didn't solve the issue though. It can be good for anybody's psyche, but if it's not a solution that works, then it's not a solution. Right?
No.
So less people were prone to using in the back alley or whatever because there was no worry about the police stopping them. Police didn't stop them. That statement is incomplete on its face.
Yeah.
Right.
So, doing drugs down the road where other people can see you is not good for society either.
Right. Less people were prone to using the back alley, right? So the government didn't give the program a chance to work before they deemed it unworkable. That's over, 700 days? That's 3 years. That's a lot. That's a lot of time.
Yeah, they gave it 3 years in fairness to the government today.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like they put the infrastructure in place over those 3 years or even before this. As I said, it's a well-meaning program, but very badly funded and thought out.
So BC Green Party MLA Jeremy Valeriate said if the destigmatization was the government's only measure of success, and the pilot failed not because of the policy itself, but because the government failed to do the necessary public education, which is
Yeah.
legit. If I tell you, hey, look, please come in and get help, and everybody can see it, that's good, right? People who are worried about being arrested won't reach out for help. This knee-jerk reaction is designed to appease the opposition conservatives rather than engage in a thoughtful course correction. We cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater here. So, again,
Yeah,
that was
that's kind of
Jeremy
what
Valeriani.
enough is I actually kind of agree with him.
Yeah.
There should be more education, resources,
sure.
and so on. I understand what he's trying to say here. But the problem is when you're with a lot of conservatives, they just, as I keep saying, they just bang them up and throw away the key without
Mhm.
addressing any of the issues.
Right.
Yeah, that's a problem with most conservatives. They're one solution people. They
Right.
don't think anywhere outside the box because
Right. It's
they
just a
wouldn't be
black and
conservative
white
otherwise.
solution. This will work because I said
Yeah,
it'll work.
exactly.
And anyway, so
They're just not sharp enough to think anything better, really, in a lot of cases.
drug deaths in British Columbia initially continued to rise after decriminalization, hitting a record of 2,589 in 2023, an increase of 8% over the previous years. That was faster than in some other places in Canada, such as Ontario, where deaths were up 4%, while deaths had started falling in the United States after peaking in 2022. The policy was curtailed in 2024, and deaths fell 10% that year compared to 2023. That was slower than Ontario, which experienced a 15% decline, while deaths dropped by 27% in the United States that year. So when they curtail the program, there are less deaths.
Yeah.
So that's
interesting. Interesting.
So
Very interesting.
there were 1,538 deaths in British Columbia in the first 10 months of 2025, putting the province on track for a decline of about 20%. And that's when they had reduced. They had reduced the policy a little bit. So a study published in JAMA Health Forum in 2025 found that both safer supply and drug decriminalization policies in British Columbia were associated with increased opioid overdose hospitalizations, but not with an increase in opioid deaths. So more people get to the hospital, but they have in fact overdosed, and you got to hit them with that Narcan or got dead drug users, right?
Yeah. Okay. They're still, it's not fixing the underlying problem, really, by the sounds of it.
Right. The BC pilot program had received scathing reviews from the federal opposition Conservatives leader Pierre Poilievre. Spokesperson similarly said Wednesday that the federal Liberal government could have stopped their deadly and radical experiment at any time. So we are seeing this policy failing over and over and over again. And when we have suicidal empathy as the program as opposed to solutions, we end up with these results again and again and again. But it seems like they just can't stop themselves. They're like, no, we need to help people. Sometimes they need to be locked up. The assessment seems wrong.
Yeah, I think the sad thing about a lot of these policies is they're trying to fix a complex issue with
simple solutions.
Yeah, and it's not going to work that way. It's you can't take, as I say, European models and try to make them work in North America.
Right.
Now they're Canada or because one is different culture, different people, different outlook.
Right.
And it's just never going to work because you have different, you have different drugs in a lot of ways. You have more harder drugs over there as well. And plus, as I said, the culture is different. It's not going to work.
You're on an island. It's probably a little more difficult to get that dope to your island, bud.
No, but even on the European continent, we're all different. We're a completely different culture compared to there, where you have a tendency to kind of lock up first and think about it later.
Right.
And plus, the politicians, like in Canada, they're trying to come up with a simple solution for complex problems, just to make headlines, and it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
Like it takes decades to solve any drug problem. Look at, even if we take Portugal, for instance, it took them decades of trial and error to come up with a program that works.
It took 2 decades for it to even out. After 10 years, they were doing really good, and after 20, looking pretty good.
Yeah.
So
that's what I said. It takes time, but the problem is they're not willing to put in the time and
for this one,
resources.
They put in the 3 years.
But put in the 3 years, but not the resources behind it. That's what this looks like.
It's definitely what it feels like.
They put in the policy. They didn't do the training properly. They didn't put any of the hard work in.
Yeah, they just expected it to work because they changed one law, and that's not really how that works. So
It's not going to work, no.
Lilly said that instead, in quotes, they were perfectly content to sit and watch as our streets were flooded with highly powerful opioids, adding that countless families will never recover from the loss of their loved ones. In a statement following the announcement, the British Columbia conservatives said the risky experiment with drug decriminalization negatively affected communities and schools. Facts, area of effect, cultural decay because of open-air drug markets. From the outset, businesses, local governments, and police raised alarms about increased public drug use and disorder in community spaces. Instead of acting quickly to tighten the rules and restore confidence, the NDP defended the approach until the consequences became impossible to ignore, mental health critic Claire Rattay said in the statement. Lynn said she had tried all means to keep drug dealers and bad friends from supplying Emmy with drugs, but the decriminalization program that had created the environment unsafe for children. She said that speaking out against the program has become my mission and my responsibility. I terribly miss my daughter who left the world so early. Yeah, facts.
Yes.
Like, if everybody can have just a little bit of dope on them, then they can hand just a little bit of dope to your kid.
Yeah. Right. And it's, as I say, it's a very badly thought out policy across the board.
Yeah.
Like, they were trying to use a system that would never work. You have to specialize these kind of policies for your own unique situations, not just copy and paste somebody else's homework.
Yeah, that's not going to work. So the report was prepared by Ashley Joannou, the Canadian Press, first published 14 January 2026. So in conclusion, it looks like the policy has failed, and it looks like this policy, as it continues with suicidal empathy to be employed everywhere on this continent, is just failing miserably. We need to find better solutions.
It won't work because there's not enough infrastructure in place. Just doomed to fail at the start. Like, you have police forces that are holding on by shoestring budget. They don't have the resources for it. The public health sector, for the most part, is little or non-existent. It won't work. The problem is you'll have to come up with a solution yourselves, but besides copying other people's homework, as they say.
Facts. All right, you got anything in closing there, Patrick?
Oh no, that's it.
Good to go.
I said my little piece.
you put your business out there. All right. For Patrick McCallum, I am Alex Johansson. We are the A&P Gents. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things. Help us beat the algorithm. We are out.